News, back to production. More you say, I'm fed to mega stereo. Kuwa diho subiza, kuwa diho subutunzi, kuwa di.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Let's Get Real with Seven podcast. Today I have a friend. His name is Joey. I'm gonna give him a chance to kind of briefly summarize who he is, a little bit about himself. But the reason why I decided to interview him because you and I met at the Grand, the coffee shop,
Right.
and we had some quite intriguing conversation. It was almost like at first you questioned exactly what I was doing there with my friend,
Right.
and then it becoming something an actual cool conversation. We got to know each other and just kind of break things down. And so I was like, you seem like a very intriguing person for me because I think we almost in a sense are the same, but we kind of ended up going towards different direction. But we're almost at the same exact place in life, almost like where we're happy with where we're at, and we're more comfortable with ourselves now. So, but before we go into the conversation, I'd like to give you a few seconds to kind of just briefly summarize who Joey is.
Who is Joey?
Yeah.
I'm from Phoenix. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Tempe, and went to McClintock High School. Went to ASU for a year. About a year.
Mm-hmm.
Freaked me out. 600 college students in my political science course. I was just like, that's too much. I was a Christian since third grade, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the church I was going to, a Lutheran church at the time, this group came in from California called Shaliach, which is a Hebrew word that means sent one. And they sang and did puppet skits and they did drama skits, and it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. But also at the end they were saying, hey, we want to extend an invitation to anybody that's getting out of high school, looking for school. And they did this pitch about going to school, this Bible Institute in California. And I, at the time, was supposed to go to, I had been in ASU. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I really wanted to be a screenwriter for a long time. But I wasn't quite sure at the time. Anyway, so I realized that a bunch of my friends, my closest friends at church, were going to go to that school.
Right.
And so I thought, no English, no math, like choir, drama, classes about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
For a couple of years with my best friends who were all leaving.
Right.
And I grew up as a very lonely child. And so I just, that was an easy decision.
Right.
So I told people I'm going to find out why I believe what I believe.
Okay.
But that's not really why I went. And that's what someone told me, and I thought, well, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
So I told people I'm going to find out why I believe what I believe.
Okay.
And so I went there, but solely I went there because my friends were going there,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know anything to do. I did bad in school. So, I always got A's in classes I loved,
Right.
and failed classes I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
So, went there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Was on a drama team for a year. Shaliach after that, traveled around. That was a blast for a year. Stayed in people's houses and I did drama and puppet skits and all that stuff. And came back and went to Scottsdale Community College and discovered that I figured out a way to get A's in every class.
Okay. And how was that? I wish I would have known this.
Yeah, this one I
Sure.
discovered on my own because everybody was like, at the time I had untreated and undiagnosed ADHD,
Okay.
and I got treated when I was 39. But I was totally untreated, undiagnosed, and so parents, everybody tried all kinds of stuff, and nothing worked. Well, so when I got into college, I was taking this again, Shakespeare A, got an A, English got an A because I loved the class.
Right.
Math D,
Right.
history class D. So I was taking this history class, and I decided I'm going to take it, although I do need the credit. At that point, I was going to take classes to go to USC. Well, my grades weren't good enough, so I wasn't really realistic, but I wanted to go to film school to become a screenwriter. So I was going to take this history class as a required credit. And I said, I'm taking this to study real history, to figure out how to write fake history. Okay, so I'm not necessarily in it to get good grades, I'm in it to do that.
Right.
So what I would do is, because of that mindset, I just thought, okay, cool, how do I, and again, I failed, got D's in history all my whole life before that. So what I did is in the margin, I'd have the book open, be teaching, right? The teacher's pretty boring. He loved history, so he wasn't animated or nothing. He just sat there and talked. You could tell he really liked what he was talking about.
Right.
I'd have the book open, and he'd be talking, and let's say he'd mentioned something about the Trojan horse, right? That knocked down the wall and Trojans.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. Anyway, he'd mention that, and he'd say, "Okay, that's going to be on the test weekend." So you'd highlight that section. So very quickly, I'd highlight it, and I'd say to myself, how can I use that in the screenplay I'm writing right now? And as fast as I could, I'd write it in the margins. Someone sneaks into something using something else. I'd write that in the margin. I started doing that every time something was important for class, we had to do lessons or everything. I would always write in the margins of the book, how could I use that in my screenplay? How could I use that in my screenplay? Fast, in like 5 seconds. That's it. So by the end of the year, I've been getting like a B, actually, because I was interested, and I was writing stuff. I was turning it into screenplay notes. We had a test coming up, and it was going to be like about a third of the grade. And I realized I hadn't studied for history.
Right.
Hadn't studied the stuff. I was like, crap, I got to do that. I thought, well, but I'm not in class to get a good grade. I'm in class to do my script.
Right.
So I'm going to work on my script instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the notes I made in the margins and type those into my computer. And so that's how I studied for the test, was by doing that. That's all I was doing. I'd look at it, and of course I'd look at what it was referencing, and I'd type in those notes, and I'd type in those notes. So all I did was study my screenplay. Then I went in on the Monday and took the test, and then when they handed out the results, I got 100%. I didn't miss a single question. I got a class. And I was like,
Yeah.
and so I started doing that for every class.
Mhm.
It didn't matter if it was math or any class I didn't like, geography, whatever. I would say, I'm in here to learn about how to write my screenplay better, whatever screenplay I'm writing.
Mhm.
I would translate all the notes into that. And so that process of association, I remembered everything. I was super excited about it, and I got A's in everything. And I know this is just a question about me, but that was a big deal. I was getting A's, I was in honor classes and all kinds of stuff. And then at some point, I was getting so much writing work because I was a writer. I was getting writing work on the side, brochures, websites, things like that. And eventually, I had so much work, but I wrote a stage play and some others. Got paid like $5,000. Never got performed, but I wrote it. Got paid for it. I was getting these side jobs writing, and eventually I had so much side work coming in from writing, I had to decide between getting my degree or
Working on the
getting my degree for what? To become a writer.
Exactly.
But then I'm getting all this work from writing. And it took a while. It took a few years actually before I completely stopped school because I just love to learn.
Right.
Yeah. So then I started writing, and I've just been writing ever since.
Okay. So something that's very intriguing about what we talked about during when we met at the coffee shop, it was about the whole why you believe in what you believe in.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question would be did you ever figure out what you believed in once you went to that Bible school with your friend?
That's a good question. I found out not so much why I believed it, but I did find out why I was taught that, and then of course I made a decision to believe it.
Right.
But a lot of it was very confusing. I mean, there's the things you're taught, and then there's all the unspoken lessons you're taught.
Right. Like.
So I'll give you an example. This
Right.
is a Lutheran Bible Institute. The church I went to was, conservative, right?
Mhm.
On one hand, on the other hand, kind of liberal. But so there was on-campus housing at this Bible school, right? And there was things like, after a certain hour, you weren't allowed to be in the girls' dorms, that
Mhm.
stuff. And so there were so many exceptions. Everybody was sleeping over at the other people's houses and sleeping over at our houses. And I didn't see people getting in trouble. And yet they're, look, this is a Bible school, you can't be doing that. We had this dance, City Hawkins, right? That's Girl Ask Guy.
Right.
2 nights before the dance, no one had asked me to go. And so I thought, I'm gonna go as a man and a woman. So I grew beard out. I mean, I had a beard. I shaved half of it off for my mustache.
Right.
Half of it off. Anyway, I had two girls. The night before, a couple days before that, both asked me to go. And I said, well, here's the deal. Since no one asked me, if you here come together, I have them come together. I said, you guys have both asked me, and what I decided is go by myself. There's gonna be a contest for best dressed.
Right.
I was gonna go as both half man, half woman.
Right.
Since no one asked me, I was gonna go by myself. But if you'll go on my man's side, you dress as a man and go on my woman's side, then you can both go. Right?
Right.
So I went, and so stuff like that was applauded, and like, you know, I won best dress. I mean, that's all fine. That's great.
Right.
But for this, you know, conservative Christian Bible school and being totally cool with that didn't jive with what I was being taught. Right. And then sleeping in each other's houses overnight. Nothing. I don't remember anybody getting in trouble. I dressed up in drag like 3 times a year with my friends just to freak out the teachers.
Right.
You know, everybody's pushing boundaries constantly, and nobody ever got in trouble for it, which is fine. On the one hand, you'd say, "Oh, that's great, just being creative and whatever."
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't jive with the very strict, you know, anti-gay, just this one, this woman, this girl. I had found out from some of the other church friends that she had slept with all the guys. I was still a virgin at that time. And so I was sitting on the bed with her one day talking. And I was like, hey, I heard that da-da. She was like, well, yeah, you know. I was like, can I get in line? Like, so.
Right.
Anyway, so, you know, that's funny. That's how I lost my virginity. I didn't lose it. I know where it is. But the song playing on the radio was this Janet Jackson song, Let's Wait a While. It was playing right in the middle of that. But all this stuff is like so completely the opposite of everything that you're being taught in church. So those things never, I was like, I don't know.
So it's hard to believe in something that no one's really living out.
No one. In my whole life, that's redundant. In my life, right? I think I've met 3 Christians, maybe 4, who, when I knew them, when I got to not just met them, but you know, got to know them, that were so radically different from people I just knew in the rest of the world, and what they talked about and how they behaved, the love that poured out of them, lack of judgment, not bad judgment, but not judging people, not pointing fingers, not all that stuff you see in the church. Mostly, I think I met 4 people, and all they're all just the same as the rest of the world. There's just no difference, other than they have a certain, you know, collective conversation, collective words. And everybody has a unique vocabulary language, about 5 or 6 or 7,000 words, right? There's a certain number of words you use, certain kind of words you use. And when I got married, before I got married, 3 years before I got married, the woman I was dating at the time was agnostic, but she was raised in a Lutheran church, and she was going to church with me. In hindsight, I realized that was because she liked me, not because she was into Christianity. Right? That's why she was going to church, because she liked me and she wanted me around her. And we were sitting in this college group, and she said, and we hang out the group, there'd be Bible study, and we go to Starbucks and hang out there. And she said to me one day, she said, I noticed that all of the people in the group, although they talk about, you know, they work at these jobs that aren't Christian jobs, they, you know, obviously they live in the world, that no one has any friends. I've never heard anyone ever mention a friend that's not a Christian, and mostly that don't go to this church. And I was like, nah, that's not true. But I started watching, and I'm like, it's true. They talk about praying for their unsaved friends, but you never hear them talk about, oh, I went to a movie with so-and-so, I went to have dinner with somebody, we did this cool thing. It's always only the Christian clique. And I'm like, so a lot of those things over time started saying, if I saw a huge percentage of the people, those 3 people or 4 people I've seen in my life, then I'd be like, there's something definitely here. But it's so tiny.
So it's interesting when you say that, like, those people that are in a church, like, they have a clique, like you're saying, they have a specific group who they hang out with, the way they talk, and whenever they are mentioning anybody that's outside of Christianity, call it or whatever, then it's let's pray for them because they're sinners or whatever.
There's something, or they're really, or just they're struggling. My friend at work is really struggling with this. That's when their names come up when you're praying for people. Right. They never come up just as a conversation.
So, but then again, that's like being a hypocrite because the way Jesus lived, like he was a friend, he wanted to get close to everybody, regardless of what religion, regardless of where you're from, regardless of what aspect of life you're in.
Yeah,
that's literally almost saying that like we believe in this Jesus, but like we don't live like it. So that's quite, and like I see that a lot too, and it's sad to like hear you say that there's only 4 people that you've met that you're like, okay, there is something different. This is what Christ like.
Yeah. Now there is a sameness to Christians.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this is when I was married, went to my brother's church. I'm not saying that. My brother's church, and it's one of my 3 other brothers, but it's like it's a non-denominational church, which now is officially a denomination, right? Because it's a very specific kind of church going. It's like in malls, and it's very kind of, there's a Starbucks, there's a coffee house there, and there's a bookstore there, and there's like, it's very mall-like behavior at a church. But they're all coming, all these people, my wife and I were standing there, ex-wife now, but we're standing out there waiting for them to come out of the church. As people were piling out when the service ended, and they all looked different, right? There was young and old, and different styles of clothing, and very different, races and different everything. But as they came out, my wife looked at me, she goes, they all look the same. I said, I know, I can tell. They all look the same. And it's not a compliment. It's not like, yes, they have the Spirit of Christ in them. The Holy Spirit's in everyone, and you can just feel it. It wasn't that. It was more like lemmings. It was more like sort of indoctrinated. It was a more like, and it's hard to describe. It's just, you kind of know, it kind of makes you go, so those things over time, there's just not. So now that I've been outside of the church for about 4 years, for one thing, I've never been more authentically me than now. I've never been truly happier than now. Things that I could never see inside the church because I was there since 2nd or 3rd grade. When you see them from the outside, I'm like, wow, that looks so different now. Mm-hmm. Not, like there's an objectivity to it that I couldn't have seen before. It's really interesting.
I definitely want to get to that in a little bit because what you're talking about, like when you left the church 4 years ago, you became your better self almost. Now your eyes are open to the different things that you were blinded to almost because everybody believed the same thing, everybody talked the same, everybody did everything the same. So it's hard to notice any difference if you're in that environment. I want to get to that in a little bit here.
Sure.
But so at the coffee shop, you got there, and the first thing is that you saw the Bible that was sitting on the table.
I saw the Bible and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have sat here. Sat here. Huge table, right? This huge round table. I'm like, my first thought was like, well, she's attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, she's with that guy. There's no one else at the table.
Right.
I was like, that's a good reason to sit there. There's this huge table. There's 2 people. Obviously, anybody can sit there.
Yeah.
And so I walked over and I was like, is there a plug around here? And like, kind of already knew the plug was like right there.
Yeah.
By her. But I was like, it's right there. I'm like, oh, cool. I'll just sit here. So that all worked out fine.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. So, P.S. So I sit down and then I was like, well, then I started hearing the conversation. And as I started the Bible, I was like, oh, crap. Why did I sit here?
This guy.
This guy. And I was like, well, that's like, I didn't know if you knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously you must have. You're sitting next to each other.
Right.
So, the Bible's out. And I was like, well, that's okay. I'm just going to do my writing. But then I'm curious. And it's like, I'm like, thoughts like, there's a boldness in having your Bible out in public because it's a proclamation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pigeonhole and all that, like, oh, he's one of them, if you got the Bible out. So I was like, well, whatever. But then I had my headphones on. I was listening to music, but I could hear snippets come through, and I heard, like, you were talking to her, and it sounded like, again, I'm listening to my music and writing, but I'm still hearing pieces of it. I'm also kind of listening. You sound like you're explaining stuff from the Bible, and she's asking questions like she doesn't quite understand certain things, but then there's a little pushback. She's kind of challenging you on some issues, and I'm putting this picture together, and I'm thinking, she was just sitting here by herself, minding her own business, and this guy plopped himself down with his Bible, and now he's preaching to her. Essentially like that kind of story.
Mm-hmm.
And so then once I had enough, like, what I thought was pretty accurate information, then I jumped in. You know.
Right.
I was like, hey, is he harassing you? Like,
Right. Okay, so what changed? Because like again, it went from okay, well he's one of like a typical critic who's making this bold statement because one, he probably thinks he's better than everybody because of what he believes in. Because that's a lot of well, for me at least, what I've seen in the church is anybody that says that they're a Christian, they almost make themselves better than everybody else because of what they believe in,
yeah,
even if they're not living that lifestyle.
Well, it's the whole we're saved, you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so we begin to actually have a conversation, and then when we talk, now we can get to the aspect of where you were saying that you left the church 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and you felt like you're the most authentic like version of yourself. But for me, it's actually interesting because like before,
That's why you had the opposite.
yeah, I had the complete opposite. Because whenever I would like, because like you too, I'm from literally this church we're in right now is a family grown from my house type of church, and so
Okay.
I was in it since day one. There was like no questions or like any. I never had an option. I almost was thrown in it, right? And so I believed because my mother believed.
Right.
And then
Well, that's what you knew.
that's
right?
all I used to. Now I go to college though, then you try to become your own person, and I try to do things on my own. But like it was never the same. Like I never felt full. I felt like I was being someone that I really truly wasn't. And then let's say fast forward to a year ago where I made the decision like, okay, well now I want to follow Christ myself. Like I want to do this myself, and that's when I became the best. Like I feel like the fuller version of myself. So can you kind of break down for people? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can actually fine tune it a little bit. So I didn't actually leave the church and then become my authentic self.
Mhm.
I became my authentic self, and I'm still becoming that, right? But I made this huge, like being underwater my whole life and coming out and being like, oh my gosh, this is me. I've been living underwater. That probably happened like 2 months before
Right.
I stopped going to church.
Okay.
And so, but once that happened, everything looked different. And even my decision to divorce,
Right.
I had left the house, the married house, I call it. I just
Right.
left it. I wasn't leaving to get a divorce. I needed to figure out who I was. I remember saying, I don't know who I am, right? Because I was a full-on codependent in my marriage, and we shouldn't have gone past the third date.
Right.
And we dated for 3 years before we got married. I knew 100% this was not a good match.
Okay. So
That's a good start.
Okay, let's talk about that because I think that's very important. One, why did you go through with the marriage?
Yeah.
Even though specifically you knew after 3 months that you shouldn't be in there, right?
So after 3 dates,
3 days.
Second
3
date.
days. That was 3 months.
3 dates.
Okay.
We met at a creative thing. I'm a writer. She was an interior designer at the time. And so we met at this creative function. The very first conversation we ever had was I was raised in a Lutheran church. I was too. Well, fine. That was, it's true. But so that was our first meeting. We had a date. Then we went to the zoo. And then the second date, we had like, not an argument, not enough to be like, uh-oh, this isn't a good match, but some sort of disagreement about something. I don't remember what it was. So on the second date, we had this disagreement about something. I don't remember what it was, but it didn't get resolved. And it was starting to get a little heated, but it didn't didn't get resolved. We had a date that night, and already set up. Went to the date. Of course, it didn't get mentioned. Whatever we were disagreeing about didn't get mentioned again. Had the date. It was fun. Don't remember what we did. I remember I dropped her off at her house, and I'm in the car driving. And she gets out. She walks around the car, and then kisses me. The windows down, gives me a kiss, says goodbye, good night. She's walking away, and then she stops and goes, "Oh, one other thing." And she comes back. She goes, and she makes some comment about still being mad about that discussion we had that afternoon,
Right.
and then walks away. And I'm like, "The hell?" Well, the next day I tell her, I'm like, "That wasn't cool.
Right.
Like, where did that come from? I can't say anything. It's like, it's more like I win kind of thing or whatever." And it wasn't a joke. And I'm like, that wasn't really cool.
Yeah.
She didn't really say anything. The third date, we were at a party, and we'd had another disagreement about something, and earlier, a couple days before that, and I went over to her and I said, "Hey, I want to tell you something." At some point at the party, I really want to apologize for. I said, "I'm still thinking about what you said." This is just me showing that even though we're not talking about it, I'm still thinking about it. I'm mulling it over. Did I do something wrong? Can I change that? Whatever. And I said, I just want to apologize for that. And I thought she would say, I appreciate you still thinking about it. And that would be the end of it, right? Instead, she goes, well, yeah, you do that a lot. And I was like, fuck, she turned it around into, bashing me instead of like, and in that moment, I felt this rage just coming up. I was furious that she was doing this. But this is all in hindsight. I remember this feeling like I grabbed the scruff of the neck of that raging part inside of me. And I stuck its head underwater, and I held it underwater.
Right.
And I said, like, really calm, like holding that down, suppressing my true feelings, suppressing them. And then very calmly I said, I asked you not to do that. Doing what you're turning things around last minute. I'm not going to let you push that button anymore. It's not going to bother me.
Right.
That moment I became like 100 committed to being codependent. Why? That's your question.
Yeah.
Why? The reason was, this is all in hindsight, being able to see it, but I didn't know it at the time. I wanted away from my parents. I wanted away from my family.
Right.
I'm the oldest in the family, and I was always treated like the youngest in the family. My dad would come home from work, and I was very lonely. I mentioned I was a very lonely kid. And, loving parents, Christian parents, very loving, et cetera, but I'd sit in the hallway, and I'd be like, kind of, sullen and kind of like depressed, kind of looking like that. And it was partly an act, but partly wasn't. I wanted attention. My dad would walk in from work, his briefcase, and he'd walk right past me, and then go into the kitchen, hey kids, come in for dinner, But I was constantly ignored.
Right.
And I even asked my dad about, this is to his credit, this is a big deal. I asked him about maybe a year ago. I said, Dad, I was thinking about growing up and trying to remember times that you and I spent one-on-one time together. And I remember you teaching me to drive stick shift when I got my license. And I remember this one other thing we did. And I can't think of anything else. Surely I have a bad memory.
Right.
Because, obviously there's a ton of time growing up. He said, no, that's pretty right. He's like, I was really uncomfortable with kids. And I never spent any time with you guys one-on-one. I was like, oh my God. So I was this really, really lonely kid and ignored all the time. So now I had this woman that I was attracted to physically, plus she was a creative person, plus we did have a lot of clicking moments. But this thing in her that was such a problem, I was like, I wanted to be with her to break away from my family. Right? And so that's why I stayed dating with her, to spend more time with her and be away from my family. And then I got married eventually, thinking marriage will take me away. Lots of people get married for the wrong reason.
Right.
A lot of people will say that. I got married to break away from my family. I got married to get away from my friends, to get away from whatever. So that's why I did it. So when I woke up and realized that I was incredibly sad, and I didn't know why, and I started to look at it when I was married, in a relationship 15 years, and I was really sad walking my dog one day, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, why am I sad? I'm not sad. So I'm a writer, so I have all these conversations back and forth in my head, right? I'm sad. No, I'm not. Yeah, I am. Why? Well, how was your day? Did you get anything done? Did you procrastinate? No, I got stuff done today. What about this week? No, a week was good. And I did this little checklist.
Right.
Went through my life. Nope, that's all good. That's all good. I'm like, well, we need to figure this out because I can feel this really deep sadness running underneath everything. A few days later, I was like, oh, it's my marriage. Okay. So I brought it up. I started talking to my wife about it. And so, but I was starting to see that there was issues going on, and I started seeing a life skills coach who's now one of my best friends, and.
Wait, so let me pause there. So
Yeah.
you say you started seeing a life
skills coach.
Okay, so what exactly is that?
So she's 88 years old now.
Right.
She's retired psychotherapist, sex therapist, family counselor. She was a colleague of Dr. Wilbur. Dr. Wilbur in the 70s, I think, treated Sybil, who had multiple personalities, now called dissociative identity disorder. So she had specialties in that. But she was now coaching, doing life skills coaching. A friend of mine, a client, I should say, not a colleague, a client of mine, he and I would meet. He hired me to write a screenplay, and we'd meet and chit-chat. We became good friends over time, and we both had marriages that were problematic. And he would always try and get his wife to go see a counselor. She would never go. One day he said, "Oh my gosh." He went, it was amazing. I said, "Well, who did this?" And he said, "Oh, her name's Dr. Valerie Chapman-Gale." And I said, "Oh, I'll call her." And I called her up, and I talked on the phone, and I said, "So what's the problem?" And I started to tell her. I got like a sentence out. And she interrupted me, and she asked me another question. She goes, hold on a sec, I want to ask you a little bit more about what you just said there. And I was like, well, I'm not done answering the question from before. I know, this is really important. Like, okay, all right. So I started to answer her question, and I get like a few sentences out. She goes, all right, hold it right there. I want to dig a little deeper into that. I'm like, but I'm not done answering your question.
Right.
She goes, I know, and I'm like, I'm just getting mad.
Right.
So I had this conversation for like 20 minutes. I hang up, and I'm thinking, God, it was annoying. You know,
Yeah.
it's so rude. Like, she asked me a question, I can't even explain myself.
Right.
And I thought, she kept like slicing through what I was explaining and digging down deeper at a certain
Right.
point, digging down deeper. And I thought, wait a minute, maybe that's what I need, is someone who can see long before I see what's going on, that can cut through it and say, you know, like a surgeon, like drill down here, that's the problem. So I started to see her, and she said, you know, tell me what's the problem. I told her, and she's about the marriage. She said, you're a codependent. I'm like, I am not. That's ridiculous. And I started listing all the great things I've done, you know, in my career. And I don't have a degree, and I've done now 29 books. And, you know, I raise in downtown Phoenix, and I make this much money. And I'm like, I've done this huge art project, and you know, I say today, and I'm just spouting all these amazing leadership things I'm doing, and I've done. I'm not a codependent. Codependents can't get that stuff done. Right. She's like, that can all be true, but you're still a codependent. Right. So she's like, you know, I won't tell you the story, but it is really good. It's a little long, but she's like, here's what I want you to do in the situation with your wife. Next time it happens, I describe something that happens every week. And I go, I can't do that. It seems mean. She goes, no, just do it. And so I went and I did it, and it had to do with codependent, and I'm also an empath, right? So I can feel your feelings and your emotions, and I start to respond to that even before most people know that they have certain emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So my ex-wife probably fits into the narcissist thing. So an empath and a narcissist and a codependent narcissist are perfect for them,
right?
Because they get you to do everything for them.
Right.
And so when I stopped doing everything for them, and this was it was like this tiniest little thing. I said, hey, what's for dinner? And she goes, I haven't decided what to make. And I go, well, and this is after my coaching. We did this role play, and we worked this all out.
Right.
And I said, she goes, I can't decide what to make. And I go, that's okay. And I walked into the refrigerator. Now before, there'd been this huge drawn out thing where I went, I looked, and she didn't want anything that was in there. And then she wanted me to go get something from the store. And then I got it, it came back. She didn't like it. And it was this huge ordeal. And my coach was like, next time, just help yourself to something. I was like, that's mean, you know. Right. Anyway, so she said, what's for dinner? I don't know. I said, that's okay. And I walk into the kitchen, start looking for food. And she goes, well, what about me? Now, I'd never, ever just done my own thing like that. I go, well, there's a ton of stuff in here, leftovers. Come check it out.
Yeah.
Well, can you just tell me? And I'm like, oh my God. Because I'd rehearsed it and role played it with my coach. And so I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Why is she like, and Joe, I'm telling you, Joe, you know what she's going to do? She said, I don't want that, maybe this, maybe that. I go, well, I don't really know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm being really careful to not like, you know, prick a fight or, you know, or mock her or go, I know what you're going to say. Nothing like that, right? Yeah. So I was like, there's a ton of stuff. I'm not really sure what you want, but if you come check, you know, because she's laying on the couch, it's been a long day. Mm-hmm. Come check. You can check out what's in the fridge. And she says,
can you give me a second? Hey, can you guys please keep it down? Please? Thank you. There you go.
She says, why are you being mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm not being mean.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm just getting dinner and I'm not sure what you want.
Mm-hmm.
How does that mean?
Yeah.
I said, I'm not being mean. And she says, you don't love me anymore. Now, we have never in 15 years ever so I started to see all these things. You don't love me anymore. I'm like, this is weird.
Mm-hmm.
And my coach, I tell the story to my coach later, after it happened. I go, that was so weird. You don't love me anymore because I won't tell you what's in the refrigerator? That's insane. Who comes to that conclusion? And my coach says, you know who talks like that? I said, I don't know. Children. Children associate you doing things for them, that's love. And you have to show them, no, right?
Yeah.
But someone who's emotionally stuck in childhood associates love with you doing things for them, and especially being more narcissistic personality and getting people to do things for them all the time. So that really woke me up.
Yeah.
Now that happened, and then I filed 2 weeks later. I filed for divorce.
Okay, so I think the biggest important thing that you're saying is that you got a life coach. I think for some reason, either counseling or life coach, that's almost, I'm the same. I can't even like front right now because I'm the same way. Because I know there's a lot of deeper issues that I probably should go and talk to someone else about.
Yeah.
But again, like it's almost a sense of like I can handle it myself. Like I can take care of it.
Now this is a life coach with 40 years of experience.
Right.
So it's not just a coach who got some degree or whatever. She just decided not to renew her licenses and wanted to do life skills coaching, life skills coaching. But it's so much more.
What's so important to get? What's so important about that? Like for the people, at least for people who are out there, like, man, I'm not happy in a marriage, like, and I don't want to go to counseling because I feel like I can handle it. I should be able to take care.
Yeah,
of
that's
it.
that's a big deal.
Important? What's so like? Why is that so important?
Well, like I said, she could say, well, it's just like writing.
Right.
Let's say you're like, hey, I've written a story. Would you take a look at it and give me your opinion of it?
Right.
I'm like, sure. Send me, and you say to me, hear this all the time, I'll send you the first chapter. I'm like, no. Send me the first 5 pages. Now, even that's actually a lie. I don't need 5 pages. I need 2 paragraphs.
Really?
Maybe 1 paragraph. The first 2 paragraphs is all I need. I can tell you about the rest of your book, what the problems are based on the first page for sure, 3 paragraphs. But I don't need 5 pages, but I'll tell them 5 pages because there's no way they would ever believe that you're gonna be able to see anything based on a few sentences.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're experienced and you know this stuff and you've dealt with this stuff for a lot of years or whatever, you don't need all that other stuff. So looking for a coach, you need someone who's got experience that can tell, stop it right there. That's what's going on. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
All right, so then basically, so you said 2 weeks later after that you filed for divorce.
So I move out. I go up. I can't figure out who I am. I move out, and then I'm agonizing about, what to do.
So how does this affect your, let's say, your
My faith.
Your faith, yeah. So how does this affect your faith? Because
so I'm still praying. I still go to church. Whatever. I'm going to Bible studies and Sundays, and I'm reading and devotions and all that. So I'm still doing all that stuff. And I always had since probably grade school.
Right.
I always went to Bible studies and really involved in church stuff. And so I move out and I get in a guest house, and I'm still doing church stuff, and I can't decide what to do. And I'm in church, and I'm asking for advice and stuff. Actually, I have to tell you this because this is eye-opening. I'm having dinner with my mom, and my mom says, and I'm like, Mom, I can't decide what to do. Divorce, stay with it, or whatever. And she says, I don't think she really likes you. My wife at the time.
Right.
And I say, really? I've never heard this from my mom.
Yeah.
And why do you say that? Well, every time she comes over and talks with the family and talks with us, when you're not around, she talks about herself and she talks about you guys as a couple. I've never heard her once talk about Joey's doing this cool thing or this is what Joey's doing or anything. It's always only her world and our, the married world. I don't think she really likes you. And I was like, this is incredible. Now, after that, when I asked my mom about that later, my mom's a huge codependent and has issues of her own. And she said, no, I just said that was my opinion. I didn't say that's what I thought. I'm like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Sorry. So
no, you're fine. You're fine.
Of course, that's what she thought. That's
right.
So, but I was in church, and I was like, God, I don't know what to do. And I was sitting in church, and I heard, maybe this is the second time in my life I've heard God's voice, or a voice, but it wasn't a voice. It wasn't audible. It was literally like there was these old, I don't know what they're called, They're like these little pin rods, little tiny rods, silver rods, about that long, and they're all together like this. And there's like, you push your hand into it, it'll show you the impression on the other side. You know, you can put your face in it. It shows you that it kind of, the pins stick out, right? So the answer was, what should I do? What should I do? And the answer felt like inside of me. It wasn't a voice, it wasn't audible, but I felt a sentence. You know what I'm saying? And the sentence was, it wasn't even like I was reading it. It's very hard to describe. It was just like that. The answer was, you take care of you, meaning Joey, right? You take care of you, I'll take care of Lisa. Next one. You take care of you, I'll take care of Lisa.
Yeah.
And I thought, because there was also no self-care going on for me, right? And being codependent. You take care of you, I'll take care of Lisa. And I thought, okay, how long? Like, just today, a month? Like, how long am I supposed to be doing that? And this was the answer. You take care of you, I'll take care of Lisa.
Right.
Now, that was a huge thing. That was permission to take care of myself and not worry about someone I can't change her. I can't make her change. So that was a huge thing, to not try to change people. That was the last time I went to church. And so it wasn't like I left because I was pissed off at God and angry at God. And he gave me an answer that I was looking for. But I needed like sort of I needed some time away. And the more time I spent away, other things started becoming, more clear.
We'll get to, because there's another aspect of that I would like to touch on, but I think another one of the major things that I wanted us to hit on was, again, we're at the coffee shop. I bring up my book. And you described to me about the whole aspect of whenever I meet someone new or talking to someone new and they ask me what I do, to say that I'm an author.
Right, that's right.
I would really like for you to hit on that, because I think, not even just with the whole writing situation, but I think the whole aspect of just life, like what you want to do, instead of almost speaking into existence, like
that's
while
right.
you're doing it.
That's right.
I think a lot of people need to hear that instead of saying, "Oh, well, I'm working on this."
That's right.
Say, can you actually? Because I really liked how you broke it down. So
So, and I'll associate with my experience in that was I was working at Starbucks full time, but I was also writing a novel at the time, and I'd spent 3 or 4 months in New Zealand doing research on a screenplay, and then came back and I decided I'm going to make it a book instead. And I needed money, so I got this job at Starbucks, and I'm working there all the time. And I had told myself, that looks like a fun job, and I need money, and I was there writing all the time. And I'd asked, you guys hiring? They're like, we have to hire you. You practically live here, right?
Right.
So I got the job pretty easily. And but I remembered saying to myself early on, I'm going to make one of the main characters in this book have something to do with coffee at like a major level. And so that will make going to work research.
So it's almost like the whole school thing as well too. Almost like you're studying, but studying.
But I'm also not.
Okay. So
it's always, it's like these Russian dolls, where there's a doll inside of a doll inside of a doll.
Yeah.
So it's like that. I'm always like, let's make it into something I love. So that's behind the what do I do for a living thing. So I met someone, I think, at a party, and they said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, I'm an author. And they said, "Oh." Now, my answer was, I'm an author. Why? Because I was like, well, I'm at Starbucks researching for this book I'm writing, right? And also the other benefits are I need money, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But why that job specifically? It didn't start out that way, but then I made it a character that changed it. So I changed my narrative pretty easily by making it part of what I was doing. The whole thing about write what you know. So if you make it a part of you in the rest of your life, it can be the main thing, and that's what I want to do for a living. So I said, well, I'm an author. Oh my gosh, what do you write? We talked for an hour about that stuff. What do you write? And every single question that she would ask me, I said to myself, I had already decided, I'm not even sure I was conscious, but I'm going to answer it completely honestly. No like misdirection, no like some days, none of that stuff. I'm just going to be, I'll be very confident in my answer. 100% truth though, but it will make it clear to her, or whoever I'm talking to, that this is what I do. And that everything else supports me being an author. and it was about me. And so, she'd ask a question like, is there a chance I've read something that you've written?
Mhm.
Are you into fashion?
Right.
I might mention a couple things. I'd done like 2 books at that point as a ghostwriter, and they were self-published. So I knew she probably hadn't read it, but I don't
Right.
know. That's a big question. Maybe I've read it. I said, maybe.
Right.
Now, of course, they're going to think, oh, it's probably, they associate all these things with it. Traditionally published book, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's not what they said. That's literally, is there a chance I read it? I said, maybe, sure. And then she, what about this? I'd answer all these questions. Then a couple months later, I bump into this girl again. And she says, hey, I just found out that you work like 35 hours a week at Starbucks.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. You said you're an author,
Yeah.
right? Like I caught you.
Mhm.
You said you're an author, and her thing is you're not.
Mhm.
You're not an author. You work at Starbucks full time. And I said, well, I am an author.
Mhm.
Yeah, but have you published anything?
Right.
Not yet.
Mhm.
And so all the answers were her going off on a tangent and her associating it with. So this huge deal was me simply saying I'm an author and then being an author
Yeah.
and defining what are those things. So, like, if you want to be. Now, there's very few jobs in the whole world that you really can't say that and be honest. Like, so what do you do for a living? I'm a doctor, right? But you don't have
Yeah.
a license to practice. You're not, except you haven't gone to school, you're not a doctor, right? Well, unless you're a certain kind of doctor.
Right.
There's other doctors that are, anyway. So being really clear about what you want to do, and then that's what you do. And when someone asks you, what do you do for a living? You say, that's what I do for a living.
Mhm.
And so if they ask you those questions, like, yeah, so, it is part of, but it's not, it is part of it's putting it out there, speaking into an existence. The trick isn't the speaking.
Right.
The trick is, this is what I'm doing for a living.
Mhm.
And I don't think getting paid for it defines that that's what you get. That's what you do for a living
Yeah.
because you get paid for it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I will eventually get paid.
Mhm.
I'm writing stuff now on speculation, and then one day someone will pay me for it.
Right.
And then, only when I get paid for it can I say that I was doing it for a living. I was doing it before for a living. So,
Okay, so now we're at that. I guess we can get to the end of the podcast here. So we have the earlier stages of Joey, and then now we hit a little bit about the marriage life aspect of it.
Yeah.
Sort of, not as much as I would have liked to, but now we're at Joey now. Can you kind of hit on that and tell the people who are you now? Do you,
yeah.
whether your faith, because I don't think the label Christianity defines what
Yeah.
you believe in, right? What's your faith?
Well, my faith, so I'm not an atheist,
Okay.
and I'm also not agnostic.
Okay.
Agnostic being there's a higher power, a God, but I don't think you can ever really know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can know that.
Right.
I don't, I guess I believe that on faith that I can know that. So,
Mhm.
I don't think I have faith right now.
Mhm.
It's like, I believe more, I'd be more spiritual, right?
Right.
There's so much overlap between everything.
Mhm.
There's things that are right in Buddhism. I like Buddhism a lot. There's things in Hindu beliefs. There's things in what was, the zodiac. There's all kinds of truths all over the place. And so I'm happy. I'm joyful. I'm not afraid of death. That doesn't scare me at all. I do have in the back of my head, I do know that, like, if I did believe, which I don't at the moment, but if I did believe still that, Christ is in me and and he'll never leave me, well, then I'm fine. I'm really, also. So I'm covered.
Right.
But again, I don't, but, so I'm still like looking and pondering. I shot up a prayer a couple weeks ago and said, what are you doing? You don't believe that.
Right.
And I was like, that's all right. Doesn't matter.
Mhm.
If he's there, he'll hear me. And if he's not, then it doesn't matter. So, so I don't know where I am,
Mhm.
but I'm just looking still.
But I think it's cool though. I think that it doesn't, like, just because let's say you don't believe anymore, or
Yeah.
you're not living it out, whatever it is you want
Right.
to call it.
That's right.
And because of the fact that now I'm like fully immersed in it, and like I just want to, everything for me is Christ centered,
Sure.
Christ founded.
Right.
That doesn't mean you and I cannot still get along.
No,
right?
in fact, and also because I'm like, I'm not going to try to change you.
Right.
So,
And me neither. Like I wouldn't.
So that
For
doesn't
me, because I already.
affect me.
And I think it comes down to what you believe in. I think a lot of times people who are forcing someone to believe in something, they're projecting because they know what they believe in and they feel like they should be doing the same thing that they're preaching to somebody
Right.
else. But it makes them feel better to project it and be like, oh, you need to do this, you need to look better. But deep down, they're the ones that are really. So for me, I'm confident in who I believe
It's
in.
not a threat.
There is no
There's
threat.
no
like
threat.
whatever you say here, I'm not gonna be like, oh well, let me see.
yeah, but don't you think that?
Like maybe
Yeah.
but then it's like I still think we're supposed to still unite as humans. Like we're supposed to connect. We're supposed to help each other out any way we can. And so like that's why you and I can sit here and have a genuine conversation, right? And
For
so,
sure. Yeah. I do have the bonus of relating to what you're doing.
Right, exactly. So yeah, that's cool. But I'm not gonna sit like, oh, you don't believe anymore. I don't know if I can associate myself with you.
Yeah, no. Bad influence. So that's where I'm at now. It's been about 4 years. I just actually started talking to my ex-wife through emails about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's about once every 3 or 4 weeks. Just that's kind of interesting to kind of see what's going on.
Right.
Nothing personal, too personal,
But writing. I really want to hit on that because you are a writer, and so can you tell people a little bit about what kind of stuff you write and where they can find your books?
So I've done 29 books. 25 of them are all ghostwritten with no name credit.
Okay.
So I can tell you all about them, but you won't. I can't give you enough information to find them.
Okay, so why do you do it ghost in that way?
Because they're all their non-disclosures. But the reason I did ghostwriting, first of all, I was just really good at it. I'd always been mimicking people before I knew who I was. I just got good at that. But I was always good at mimicking things on the page, and it's like method acting. Pretending to be a certain person or a character. I just really good at that. So I really enjoyed it. I found out pretty early on that I could make. How much money could I make doing this? I think I got paid $2,500 for the first time. And someone said, hey, what are you working on writing? And I described it. This woman, blah, blah, blah. And then she got cancer and she couldn't write it. And I said, hey, I'm really good at mimicking people. I'll pretend to be you and then I'll record you in interviews. And then I'll write it as if I was you. And I'd never heard of ghostwriting. If I had, I didn't know what it was. And this woman I was talking to at Starbucks said, you're a ghostwriter. I was like, what? That's a cool word. Ghostwriter. So instead of what do you do for a living, I'd say I'm a ghostwriter. I'm like, what is that?
Right.
So I'm like, that got me work.
Okay.
And I would describe it. So anyway, I just really loved it. And so they got me a lot of work. And also it got me looking at other work. Because I can ghostwrite anything. I can mimic any style. In fact, I'm doing a series right now that's super cool on Instagram. I started, I think, a week ago. I'm making up a story from scratch. I only decided, and I'm sorry, this is a distraction from your question, but I wanted to take my talent and push it farther than I ever pushed it. Let's say this room is my life and my talent's this bouncy ball. And I was given it, I was born with this. Oh, where'd this come from, right? So I spent my whole life bouncing it around. I'm learning tricks. I'm like, hey, you run with your hand in the air, and I'll bounce it, and you'll be able to catch it. And I was all this stuff, right? And I thought, I've never what if I throw it through that open door as hard as I can? Will it come back to me? I've never tried. So I'm like, let's really test how this thing works. So I come up with this idea. I came up with, I'm going to write a story from scratch. I have no characters, plot, time setting. I know nothing. All I know is how many chapters are in it. There's 6 chapters in part 1. There's 17 chapters in part 2, and there's 5 or 6 chapters in part 3. And I posted that on Instagram, and it says a novel creation, which is what I'm doing. I left up entendres, so I'm creating a novel from scratch, and it's a novel, unique idea. So I have those chapters, and then I just write, and they're 20 sentences. Each chapter is not very long. And every 2 days I post it. And I'm like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
Who wrote that? And I swear to God, I'm like, damn. That's like that ball's coming back to me. I'm going, how is that even possible? So it's weird and cool and I'm doing it. So characters are coming out and it's really deep and it's poetic. It's really, really poetic. I'm literally, here's the rules. I pick a word, and I write that word down. Then I think about what's the next word. So I said, on. That seems like a good place to start a book. What's the next word? The. But as soon as I write it down, I can't change it. And I can't go back and I can't erase. I have to complete that whole 20 sentences. And when I get done, then I can go back and exchange a word, right? Or I can delete a word, but I can't add to it. That's the rules.
Dang.
So that's insanely, but for me, I needed to push this as far as I can push it. And I know my abilities, my talents in other areas, and I know I can do certain things really well. So I've been putting those out, and I'm just, and also there's a post right before that called Not for Fans, because I realized I was getting burnt out on all the stuff you're supposed to do on social media, in this case Instagram, to get fans, right? To like and follow up and spend 10 minutes before you post and 10 minutes after you post and like stuff and hashtag them and tag them in posts and and it was just exhausting. And so I was up to 450 people, and I was just like, no. I took a 3-week break from social media and came back and like, I'm not doing this for fans. I'm just going to do this for the pure pleasure of doing it. And I'm going to engage with people as they come in, but I'm not going to chase them. I'm not chasing anybody. And if they come, they come.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's really, really cool. And so people can read that, because what's happening is it's amazing. As soon as I get done, I'm going to do it again in a totally different style. The style's really cool. It's really crazy. I don't even know what to call it. And there is a secret behind it that I'm doing that I'm never telling anyone. But I like telling people that I'm not going to tell you the secret. There's a thing I'm doing that I love to take something small and make it really huge. So I saw something once, and it wasn't a big deal. People were like, oh, that's kind of clever. I mean, that's kind of interesting. And I thought, what if I did that like huge?
Yeah.
Like nobody could do that. I'm like, watch. So it's working. And I'm like, dang, this is so cool. So they can read stuff there. That's really, and there's a ton of posts about writing, and because before that I was writing about all kinds of writing stuff. I have a book coming out. Supposedly, the publisher said this winter, but because of coronavirus and everything being delayed, it's probably next year. It's called Disorderly Conduct. It's the first ghostwritten book with my name on it. It's a really, really funny about an FBI agent. It's all true. Really, really funny, called Disorderly Conduct.
And it's all ghostwritten as well too.
That's ghostwritten, but then I've got 12 projects I'm doing right now. Ghostwritten, I've got 12 projects that are not ghostwriting projects. I'm shifting out of ghostwriting to fiction. I just finished a book called Dogs Don't Bark in the Hood No More, set in St. Louis, and it's a thriller, social commentary, and that's all done. I've got some beta readers looking at it, and I'm going to be looking for an agent. And I'm writing a trilogy, magical realism trilogy, literary fiction. I was looking into erotic fiction, but I think I'm not going to do that because I don't think it's good for my head. Because it takes me places that get me
in trouble.
They get me like I just waste bucket loads of time. Like I used to go to the video store and I would like be like, what mood do I want to be in? And I'd spend like 2 or 3 hours getting videos, DVDs, and then I'd be like, you can't watch 12 movies. You don't have that much time.
Right.
And so I'd whittle it down to 2 or 3. And then by then, having looked at all these different moods and all these different movies, I'd be like, I don't really have time to watch a movie. And besides, I'm not really in the mood for it.
Right.
And then I'd leave with nothing. So I was exploring erotic fiction for kind of the same reasons, not even to do it, but just as an excuse to essentially escape from everything else. It's kind of like alcoholism, right? And I was like, and so this morning I just deleted all these videos. I didn't even look at them. I was just gathering them. So I love information. I love gathering things and pulling things together.
Right.
How fast can I get it? It's not about that other thing. I was like, what a fucking huge waste of time.
Yeah.
Delete. Next.
All right, to wrap it up, I said the main purpose of this podcast is to give motivation to people, to kind of tell them, like, regardless of where you're at in life, man, like, you'll be all right. Like,
here's a great parting thing, right? In March, I lost 100% of my work because of coronavirus. Right. I had good amount of money coming in, steady paychecks, and all those clients were affected. One made $70,000 a year. One made millions of dollars a year. Both of them lost like 75% of their business because of coronavirus. They stopped the projects. I was totally out of work. I was like, wow, I could do Lyft, Uber. I started to look at all this other stuff. I'm like, no. What can I do right now?
Right.
And so I thought, I'm going to write a book about entrepreneurs. I'm going to interview 100 entrepreneurs, 2 in every state in America, and then 24 entrepreneurs in other countries, all talking to them about what was the hardest challenge that they overcame when they were just starting their business, and what's the hardest challenge that they're overcoming now, right?
Mhm.
And it's going to be inspiring, and it's going to be. I made this kind of, really altruistic project. And how do I make money? This has to make me money. I have to get paid to do this. Well, everyone I interview will pay $900 to be in the book.
Okay.
Are you kidding? That's insane. No one's going to do that. Nobody has any money. Watch me. Now, this isn't about just me getting work.
Right.
This is the project being really altruistic to inspire people and motivate people. And who's going to do that? And so I started pitching people.
Mhm.
And so it's a lot of work. It's a ton of work. And then it's an hour on a Zoom interview. This is just to pitch it.
Right.
This is at the end, da, 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 da. What do you need from me? 10 hours for the next year? I can do that. $900, $450 broken in half. They're like,
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll make you a 99%er. So you're 99% until I get everyone gathered, 124 people.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back and say, all these other people are in,
Right.
100%. Do you want in?
Mhm.
Because I'm going after them one at a time. So
Right.
that whole project has come out of this need to generate income, generate excitement, generate hope,
Mhm.
right? So, and I'm not going to drive for Uber. I know I'd have a blast probably talking
Right.
to people,
Mhm.
right? I'm a writer.
Right.
I want to write. So then figure out some way to write.
Okay, so basically your motivation, your last speech for the people is
Yeah.
to almost not to give up too quickly, or in a sense, or try to jump into something else because what you're doing doesn't seem to be working in the moment.
Yeah, it's like really, honestly, look, in my whole life, have I ever I've never been homeless, but have I ever not had a place to sleep? No. Have I ever, in all the times I've had no money and blah 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 and all this other stuff, have I ever missed a meal other than intentionally? No. Well, wait a minute. What about clothes? I've got clothing and a place to sleep, and I've got food. What else do I need?
Right.
So that's all covered,
Mhm.
and you're going to work, and what can I do that would, and thing is, it needs to be, I know my own talents.
Right.
I know I like big projects. What gets me excited? What gets other people motivated? And so things that look impossible to somebody else, I can model that by showing that it is possible. And that's inspiring to other people. They want to be around that, right? So I guess my thing is you have something you're really good at that nobody else is that good at.
Mhm.
What is it?
Right.
And
Just try to.
just make that work.
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with I'm an author,
Exactly.
I'm a writer, and then it's a lot of the same thinking, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of constantly self improvements,
Right. Oh, I think that's really
constantly
important.
working on
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for
You're
being
welcome.
on. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm sorry that we ended up having to
That's
wrap
okay.
things a lot faster than we were supposed to.
That's okay.
But one last thing, let people know where they can find you on social media so that they
So-
can.
Instagram is Joey Robert Parks, ROBERTPARKS. So my full name, Joey Robert Parks. I do post those on Facebook, but it's exactly the same, and there's no engagement there. So it's really on Instagram. I have a website, joeyrobertparks.com.
Mhm.
There's a ton of stuff on there.
Okay,
Lots of videos and audio interviews and all kinds of stuff.
sounds good. Well, thank you guys for checking out another episode of Let's Get Roll with 7 podcast. This is my guy Joey. Y'all go check him out, follow him, and I'm excited. I would definitely love to read some of your writing for sure.
All right.
Let me know how you can find them, and
Absolutely.
I'll check them out. But as always, man, God loves you. I love you. God bless and stay safe. Thank y'all. Love y'all. Peace. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah.